Okay, welcome everyone. I'm going to get started in the spirit of time while we load up our slideshow. Welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to the 39th annual GreenThumb GrowTogether conference. And welcome to all of you tuning in virtually. My name is Isaac Mendez. I'm the Deputy Director for GreenThumb. Today I have the distinct honor of introducing our moderator for this afternoon's panel, Getting Stuff Done, Building an Equitable and Resilient Urban Agriculture for New York City. Qiana Mickie is the Director of the Mayor's Office of Urban Agriculture. As Director, Qiana oversees the administration's efforts to support, strengthen, and expand the city's network of community gardens and urban farms in alignment with Mayor Adams' vision for a healthier, more sustainable, and more equitable city. She is a lifelong New Yorker and has decades of experience as a leader in food policy, food systems, and urban agriculture. Let's give a warm welcome to Qiana and the rest of our panelists. One more item. Myself and Adder will be passing around blank pieces of paper for the Q&A at the end. Okay, thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming to the conference, but thanks for coming to this panel. I know there's so many great panels happening in workshops, so we won't be upset if you walk in and out, but we're happy that you're here and present with us. Before I introduce our esteemed panelists, I wanted to offer a little information and also ask a few questions in the audience just to get a good sense of the room. So, as Isaac mentioned, I am the city's first executive director of the Mayor's Office of Urban Agriculture. I just wanted to say it one more time, so now it's like official. They can't take it back. No, they can't. So I'm appointed. But as an appointed role, I often hear now as I work in the city structure that you work at the pleasure of the mayor. So I'm going to say here, as an appointed director of the mayor's office, I work at the pleasure of the mayor, but I answer to New Yorkers. All right. Okay. I'm going to keep that. That's what we're talking about. Okay. But seriously, I think it's a critical time for cities like New York City to prioritize racial, economic, and environmental equity in our work, in our food, in our nutrition, in our environmental initiatives in particular. And I wanted to bring together emerging leaders in varied roles in New York City in our urban ag landscape, so y'all get to not just get to know me as your director in the city office, but all these other great folks. And we wanted to come together to get a chance to share a little bit about our work, how we collaborate with each other, what are some of the barriers, give y'all a chance to have question and answers and talk to us too. And this is helping us not just inform us for today, but it helps inform the work that we bring back to the office. I think you saw the title is Getting Stuff Done. That is definitely a connection to, the mayor's priorities. But I also think that urban agriculture, we have such a long history of urban agriculture, and every one of y'all here are contributors to that history and the legacy and the future urban ag. And so I also want y'all to really see yourselves in the work and in our conversation and what we're talking about. Because there's nothing that we're able to get done in our roles without our community partners and stakeholders. So with that, I'm curious, if I did a little call and response, what would I hear? Like, how many people are gardeners from the Bronx? Hey, okay. Represent. Okay, I saw you over here, thank you. How many gardeners are here from Manhattan? I like it. Lower East Side? Yeah, those are the upper. Midtown. Oh, okay. Come on, Midtown. Surprise. Anybody from Staten Island? All right. We still have to shout them out. A lot of great work happening in Staten Island. Okay, Queens. All right. thought there would be some representation. And Brooklyn.
The People's Republic.
Okay. You know, we're not going to get territorial here. Grow Together is a safe space for all of us, but Brooklyn represents, I see it, I feel you. Okay, oh good. Now, how many of y'all have been land stewards for more than 5 years? Wow. How about more than 10 years? Amazing. And how many folks have, is this your first Grow Together? You can raise your hand. I know you, there's like 2 people on this stage that, this is not your first. This is your first. Raise your hand. Transparency is key. Transparency is key. Okay, good. And how many people have been here more than 5 times? So not here, but the conference. Okay, great. Awesome. And like when we, you know, I think what we hear in our space too, we use a lot of different terms and definitions. Like, do folks, like, do you call yourselves gardeners? Do you hear land stewards? Does that also resonate for folks? Interesting. Okay. Climate stewards? Activists? Ooh, all right. Well, I mean, that's good to hear because, you know, New York City, again, has this rich history of urban agriculture. And I think oftentimes when people think about New York City now, or when we're talking about the term urban agriculture, people tend to think of newer models, technology-driven models. And while there's a space and a place for that, we can't forget the history of struggle, the history of resistance, the history of growing, and the history of building communities when other folks left. And so to me, having that history and knowing that history is very much a part of what needs to be a part of an office or whatever plan that we build for New York City. And part of why I wanted to have this panel and bring these folks together, I'm going to stop talking so I can introduce them, is because, you know, yes, we have this rich history, and there's so many people here who have been architects in that history. People know the struggle, people are still living and working through struggle. But this is also stories of perseverance and success and resilience. And I want folks to embrace the term in this space, a resilience of not just the hardships, but also the brilliance and the beauty and innovation that can come from resilience. And I hope folks hold that here too when we're talking. So we really can't have a plan, we really can't think about agriculture in New York City without y'all. And if we're thinking about history, how do we build and expand and enrich on history? And then how do we build for the lives that we want to see, the livelihoods that we want all of us to have, rich and healthy and resilient, but then how do we also build a future? How do we define innovation where we define it for ourselves? And that helps inform how the city defines it, how the state sees us when we show up in agriculture, how the federal level see us when we talk about urban agriculture. So I know there's a lot of folks that are a part of that work or instrumental in that work that are not in the room, but I'm hoping that we continue to bring their credit, their acknowledgement, and their work to our conversations today. And with that, I'd love to introduce the panel. I'm going to start from my left, stage right, Blake Glover. So what we're going to do, instead of like bios and stuff, I'm going to ask everybody one by one to briefly tell us about you and your work as your introduction. And if it's helpful, tell us a little bit about your role and how does it play in the New York City urban ag landscape. So let's start with Blake.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. All right. I couldn't raise my hand to any of those boroughs that you called out. I'm from upstate New York, Syracuse.
We got one.
All right, we got one. We got one in there. All right. I'm Blake Glover. I'm the state conservationist for USDA Natural Resource Conservation Service, located out of Syracuse. We have 42 offices around the state, including a 43rd one that will be announced at some point in New York City. provides opportunities for all within the audience to have access to USDA programs, not only NRCS programs, but FSA programs, Farm Service Agency programs. You guys were upstairs doing the booth space today. FSA was there as well. So we're excited about that. NRCS as a whole started as the Dust Bowl, right? Everybody heard about the Dust Bowl and how it came across the U.S. There were some folks at the Capitol that saw that this dust had reached the Capitol, and so that's how NRCS Soil Conservation Services got started, along with the conservation districts. There is a New York City Conservation District. Hopefully you guys know that. We're partners with those guys as well. So that's how we got started. Real big in regular agricultural space. Urban ag is new for NRCS. The history of NRCS in New York City, there is no history. As I met with Karen Washington, one of the first farmers that I saw when I came to New York, she told me I was late. If you know Karen Washington, she's gonna let you have it, right? So she let me have it that day, and then by the time we hugged it out, but she told me I was late. I wasn't late to the meeting. USDA was late to the movement within New York City. But the understanding is that we're here now, and we are looking for partners, whether that's GreenThumb or other nonprofit organizations throughout the city that will allow us to continue to push forward with USDA technical assistance and financial assistance for all producers around the city. What was the other question?
Oh, that's it.
That's it?
That sounds good.
All right.
Well, yeah, pass the mic to Qiana.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kayla McFadden, and I currently work for Cornell University as a urban ag education and FFA specialist. I know that's a mouthful, right? But bring it back a little bit. I am ways away from home. I'm from Chicago, and my journey, Chi-Town. And my journey into agriculture started on a high school level. So I went to an agricultural-based high school. And raise your hand if you think the foundation of a lot of what we do is education. Right? 100%. So with that said, I think the work that I do is very important because I support ag education, specifically in New York City, through our ag education outreach program with Cornell. So what does that look like? Across the state, we support ages K through 12 in ag education. And essentially, we provide resources either through grants or professional development for teachers and for students. And as far as student goals, the goal would be to provide students with experiences and hands-on experiences. So within all of the schools we work with, we have a 3-circle model. And what the 3-circle model is you have work-based learning, which is hands-on experiences. And as it pertains to you all, I think it would be very important for us to consider providing students with hands-on experiences, maybe through your gardens, so that they're able to be the future leaders that we would like them to be. Alongside that, we have classroom instruction, so making sure that students are learning things within the classroom as it pertains to all aspects of agriculture, even food science, horticulture, ag mechanics, but just making sure we're providing them with well-rounded experiences. And then lastly, we have FFA, and that's another component of my role where it's a youth organization for students involved in agriculture to gain professional growth, career success. So they get the opportunity to compete in a lot of competitions, a lot of speaking engagements, and in the end, when it's time for them to come to you all for future job opportunities, they're very well-rounded and ready to take on the task at hand in which you will give them. So thank you all so much.
Pass it to you, Curtis.
Thank you. So, good afternoon, buenas tardes. How many of you are new immigrants? I'm proud to say that I was born and raised in Colombia. And as many of you know, many of our gardens were initiated and stewarded by many immigrant communities, people of color. So we just want to acknowledge that. I'm the director of the GreenThumb program. Thank you. The GreenThumb program is a program of the City of New York to support, and most important, to sustain community gardening. The GreenThumb program initiated as a temporary program in reaction, as a response to all the advocates and all the land stewards who created these amazing spaces 40 years ago. 45 years later, the program is still here and it's strong. 80% of our gardens grow food, and since the start of the pandemic, the need to grow food has increased. So not only the number of gardens have increased or interested about food production, is the idea of scaling up and doing more around food. So that's the connection that we have with urban ag in the city, and the idea of sustaining these spaces are critical. We know that these are social and green infrastructure part of our city, and happy to say that we are committed to these spaces and to preserve them because we know the value that they offer and the benefits that they offer to our communities. Briefly, our support goes from providing gardeners like you many resources from seeds and materials like lumber and compost and mulch and native plants for your gardens to thrive. So that's very important for us. So we provide that material support. At the same time, we have a dedicated team to community engagement, and that's very important. These are a very small team, consider the size of our program. We support 554 gardens. We have a team of 10, and they do their best to support all of you. I'm glad to see young faces, people who are new to the GreenThumb conference, which that's amazing, because we're looking for to cultivate the next generation of gardeners. We need you. We need these spaces to continue. So I'll leave it there. That's the role that we play in the urban ag picture. These spaces are not only open spaces, they are assets for food sovereignty. So, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this is so great to hear. All these different facets, all these different versions of organizations, capacity. You know, starting in the mayor's office of urban agriculture in September, you know, some people had asked, why is there an office of urban agriculture? Don't we have an office of food policy? Don't we already have parks? But I think what folks, and there's a history there, but I think what folks started to really hear and see is the breadth of urban agriculture really needed to be supported and amplified and innovated in ways that go beyond what our current agencies and offices can do, but in ways that support and supplement what we're working on. So with the Office of Urban Agriculture, you know, my hope is to continue to lead the city's efforts to increase healthy food access and the production of locally fresh food, minimizing climate contribution, or our contribution to climate crisis, and spur economic activity through agriculture. So to me, you know, it's not redundancy, it's actually building the intersections that we need to really move agriculture forward, and building and fostering ways that we can identify new opportunities around land, build new opportunities around economic development, but also are we continuing to support our stewards around climate resiliency from the neighborhoods up and the ground up. And how does food connect to that? So it's not just seeing our neighborhoods as end consumers of food security or places to just go back to or dump in, but are we really supporting our partners in the breadth of what food production can look like, the potential of scale. So being able to work with partners like Blank and Carlos and Caitlin, you start to see like how important it is for all of our work to kind of weave together to really find ways to engage with our stakeholders. Which kind of leads me to the second question. I think y'all did some great intros, but if there were some particular highlights that you wanted to amplify that your work in communities in evolving that urban landscape, we'd love to hear more. So if there's ways that you work with your partners, if they're elders or, indigenous conservationists, garden stewards, youth leaders. I'll start with Caitlin, but curious, especially in the work that you're doing, how you're embedded in schools. Love to hear how you're amplifying your work.
So I'll give you all a bigger picture of how I support urban ag education in high schools. So essentially, you have a lot of high schools across the 5 boroughs, right, that may have students engaging in an urban ag class, or they may be learning just a little bit through a Green Teens group, right? So alongside that, for me, I'm going in and meeting with administrators and teachers and figuring out how can I support them. And when I say support, again, we're looking at either grants or providing them work-based experiences. So connecting the pieces, I go out and I build a lot of partnerships with nonprofit organizations, or even hoping to connect with some of you all to provide students with those hands-on experiences. Because I have a lot of students who like, hey, Caitlin, I would love to help work on a garden, and I would love to know how to grow fresh produce. I may be learning it in school, but how do I actually go out and get these hands-on practical experiences? So I think the biggest thing for me is just making sure that I am making and building a lot of partnerships with even these folks on the panel, so that I am able to provide students with the best experiences possible. So when it comes to employment, people look at their resume and it's like, oh my God, this student was embedded in this amount of opportunities, or they've been working on land for 3 years while they were in school. So I think the biggest thing for me is just building partnerships that will provide our future leaders to have experiences that will help them thrive as adults.
Thank you. Blake, curious to hear.
All right. Who has heard of the Farm Bill? When I say Farm Bill, what is the first thing you think about?
Mess.
Mess. Oh, I hope you said mess. I hope you said mess. Oh, very good.
Just so much stuff in it. It's so big.
Okay, good.
Absolutely.
It
So
is a lot.
there is a lot within that Farm Bill, but the majority of those funds within the Farm Bill are for subsidies or for food stamps, SNAP benefits. Part of that Farm Bill is a conservation title within that Farm Bill, and that's how we get our authority to do work on behalf of farmers around the country. So, number one is the Farm Bill. That is our bread and butter. Environmental Quality Incentive Program and Conservation Stewardship Program that we can apply on urban land, along with small acreage producers upstate as well. That includes the big acres as well, upstate as well. Couple of things that just came out here recently, the BIL, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, there was funds in there for watershed type work. Carlos, I don't know if you have that on yours to talk about, I'll leave that to you. But there's a good partnership between NRCS and GreenThumb right now for that, along with the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act. That is huge for an agency like NRCS, a federal agency that has long been lobbying for additional funds to provide to the producers at the end of the day, the farmers. And so the infrastructure law was signed into law January, February of this year. We received lots of funding. This year, we will not receive all that funding, but 24, 25, and 26 is where our funding starts to double. And what that allows us to do as an agency, it allows us to reach out to those non-traditional customers that we historically have not been able to reach out to, and try to target those funds to those people. And that's my plan. I want to target to the folks that neither don't trust USDA for certain reasons, or just don't know USDA at all. And so as we open up this office in New York City, providing that avenue for folks to understand USDA and build that trust, and also walk hand in hand with these guys from Cornell and the mayor's office and GreenThumb and the parks, as we move forward, it's going to be beneficial for all. I think the reason why we're up here today is to show that in some way, shape, or form, we all recognize that we all somehow have to move together for the benefit to everybody in this room. And that's a part of my charter for me and for those employees that will be down there. And before I forget, Liz Camps, maybe raise your hand, is our district conservationist located in Riverhead. She services New York City at this point. And so if you haven't stopped by our booth today, I'm not sure how long the booths are open, but grab her information and we'll be able to help you in any way possible.
Great, thanks. And Carlos, I mean, the work of GreenThumb and how you support our community garden network is self-evident with the conference and what you shared, and I think folks know in their lived experience. I'm curious though, just to kind of piggyback on what Blake was sharing, if that particular initiative or if there's another partnership between NRCS and Parks and GreenThumb that you'd like to talk about, I think it would be good to share maybe a little bit about the things that folks don't see in the work that, well, they will eventually see, but some of the more harder work, the internal work about partnerships and working like across agencies and sectors. We'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Partnerships is at the core of our model. So through our partnership, GreenThumb, a city program, partners with 554 groups. That's why we have this combined 100 acres of open space. Without you, we're not able to make this happen. So at the core, we need this partnership. And a partnership between government and people is so important. It's a very unique model, which actually other cities are looking at us, going like, how do you make that happen? Because the model is working. There's no need to reinvent the wheel or anything else. So going from there, we have this partnership between government and the land stewards. GreenThumb also partners with many city agencies, for example, to create gardens, to create urban farms. So we also help having access to land, to facilitate access to land. And once the land stewards have access to land, we're able to jump in and provide resources, those that I mentioned before. We also partner with dozens of greening partners, from NYC and Farm School and you name it. And we need to, as a city agency, we're able to leverage and connect with all these great partners that we have in New York City. We're very lucky that we have that level of partnership, and also working, yes, cutting red tape, going through the hoops and the bureaucracy, but I think the beauty of that is like how to get it done.
Yes.
So it is like breaking the barriers and getting the right people, and I think in terms of like urban ag, I think we're very lucky now that we have a mayor's an office, because like our program it lives within the Parks Department, and we have specific rules and regulations, and the urban ag is the landscape is so complex that sometimes it doesn't fit our legal requirements, and some land stewards are looking to expand and be creative and be innovative about other ways of growing food, commercialization, or scaling up composting, things that at the core of our agency is open space, provide a space as a public amenity. An example of our partnership is working with NRCS, for example. Happy to report that we secure over $46 million GreenThumb, working with NRCS to provide water installation to over 200 community gardens under the Parks Department. This is an unprecedented capital improvement. Is massive. As many of you know, our gardeners access water through the fire hydrant. Right? It's not ideal. Having internal water in the garden will help you grow more food and avoid some of these challenges of accessibility. So if you want to learn more about this project, happy to talk offline. We're going through the process. So I think we're confident this will happen in the next few years. years. But it's federal funding. It's a multi-year, multi-million-dollar commitment. So we're working on that project. And the second part of the question was, did I answer all that?
I think you did.
Okay.
I think this is actually a good segue to jump in, even though I'm the moderator, is I think what you're lifting up is also a good example of why we need different offices and agencies and the difference within our city structure. GreenThumb is part of New York City Parks, which is a lead agency, whereas like my office is a mayor's office. So I get to cajole, I get to collaborate, and find ways to inform collaborations of either existing work and initiatives that lead agencies have the muscle and power to take on, the ability to apply for large-scale grants period, have a budget to do so and disseminate, but also be able to be nimble enough to help inform and intersect with across agencies, across other partners. So I have this really unique opportunity, sometimes a challenge, sometimes a constructive challenge, sometimes a barrier, is how to be in office, one that's new, and nobody has heard or seen it before, at least in the city, but we have precedent in our urban agriculture work in other agencies. So how do we build off of that? How do we expand? But, and I think for our office, our agency, as an office, we have different mandates and capacities and powers. Lead agencies, larger agencies have different mandates and capacities and powers. So sometimes folks think we can do everything we want, or it's just bureaucracy that's getting in the way, but oftentimes it's policy or regulations that are also limiting what we can or can't do, or what we can do right now and plan for the future. And I think it also then gives us the opportunity, or what I'm continuing to find as a director of an office, is how do I, stay nimble? How do I bring what I learned from the grassroots community about what is actually needed on the ground, what are some of the problems but also solutions that folks have, and how to leverage the city structure, the mechanisms to do so and inform that, whether it's in meetings or conversations or building initiatives. So I'm either identifying ways to build new initiatives, which I'm sure a city structure is not always happy to hear, but also ways to enhance existing initiatives. And that's where I think we have this power of urban agriculture to show folks. So it's a great natural fit with parks, like an agency like Parks. Other agencies have been more receptive too. Some are a little bit harder to see, but I think this gives, again, being in office, my mandate to build an urban ag plan, my mandate to bring up an advisory board. What I can do as a director is now help engage the community, our stakeholders, engage our federal and state partners, learn from partners like Caitlin, who are embedded and integrated in our other school system, and agencies, but really think through what are the connective tissues, what are the pieces, and are these things that we can identify funding for or capacity for, and if we can, how to then partner with an agency in order to apply for that grant. Or how do we inform it where then it has more of a municipal-based approach and it's more strategic than just what I might be seeing in my vision. Or when in the cajoling part, if there's an agency that's kind of done things a certain way and they keep hitting the walls or keep hitting barriers, even with like our community, I'm hoping that urban agriculture is not just a driver of equity in like a statement, but like if you had somebody who had a little bit of their wherewithal and an ability to hear from the community, can we actually lift that up to help inform what could be solutions? And then how do we leverage city assets to build those solutions? And hopefully, maybe get some money from the feds as well. So that leads me to a question around funding and partnerships. So it sounds like there's a lot of great programming, but we can't really, to be honest, talk about programming and partnerships without funding. And I'm curious, and I'm sure folks would love to hear about what are some ways your work and organizations access funding to support the programming that you do? And what are some of the barriers that you face around funding? Blake and then maybe Kate.
I can start if you want, Blake.
Okay, yeah.
Can take a break. So in the case of GreenThumb, we have a very complex budget. As I said before, GreenThumb was initiated as a response to the community gardening movement back in the 70s. And it was historically funded by HUD, federal funding. And that happened for decades until maybe less than 10 years ago, at the very end of the Bloomer administration, that for the first time, a city program started receiving funding from the city. So historically it was only federal funding, and then it started receiving a tiny bit of funding from the administration, locally, from the municipality. During the administration of Mayor de Blasio, that funding was finally baseline. So now we have federal, city, mayoral funding, and then with city council support, that funding has been increasing. And thanks to the advocates from the Play Fair campaign, we've been receiving one-shot funding, which help us to supplement our needs. That's why we have more expense funding. That's how we're able to provide more support to your gardens, and that can translate to tools, more soil, more lumber, and the day-to-day things that you need to maintain the garden. In addition to that, we have received also capital funding, which is so essential. Historically, today, we're still catching up with 40 years of this investment of the GreenThumb program to address fences, sidewalks, retaining walls, and we're still catching up. So I think we're going to get to a point that we can address all our needs, and then we can dedicate more to our priorities with the gardeners. And over the years, we've been successful talking about urban ag. It's the idea of like, we know that as an interest of the gardeners, we want to focus more of our funding to provide the seeds that you want, the seedlings that you need, and support all your food programs. We are a mini parks department within the parks department. We have even an operations team, and that team is very small as well. It's like 10 people, and we have some vehicles to serve a city-wide network of gardens, over 550. So we do our best to address the needs based on what we have. So that's why we depend on you to help us to advocate for more funding so we can support you.
Yeah. Can I jump in and then I'll pass it? I know, I'm sorry, I'm not really moderation. I mean, I made a little joke about funding and, making a comment about the federal, but in all seriousness, I think we, in an administration that wants to get stuff done, I think the reality is to get some of the things that we want to see done, the things that, Carlos is mentioning, especially the historically disinvestment in our communities, in programming, in work, in infrastructure, in the realm of food systems, in the realm of urban ag. We're going to need strong infrastructure funding. We're going to need critical program funding, even as city agencies, and finding ways to be creative around disseminating funds. So applying for those funds and finding ways to disseminate those funds so they get to our community partners. So, I would just say real quick for the office, what I've been doing in these early months has really been hearing from agency stakeholders in terms of some of the grants they've already been applying for. I've been trying to identify some of the struggles and some of the barriers that community gardeners, businesses, urban ag businesses, food-based businesses have identified have been limitations, and trying to find grants that we can again collaborate and apply with state, federal grants. I can't really, Evan's gonna do something like this, so if everyone wants to look at Evan and tell me what to talk about, not talk about. What I can share is, I definitely feel like my history in working in nonprofits, I know how critical funding can be. I also hear from community folks what are some of the very great ideas that they have around innovative land use, things that they might want to see in the city that would help them support scaling up production, new forms of urban agriculture models, whether they're just for climate resiliency or they're there for food production. So what I've been trying to do in knowing that there's a lot of great work that GreenThumb already has traction on is can we identify other opportunities to support planning, support defining new pathways to funding, leveraging funding, helping support economic development. I acknowledge the work of land stewards here in our city, and especially the sweat equity. But if we're going to continue to build a resilient city, we're going to need agriculture where we have opportunities that are also paid. So it's to continue to expand the opportunities for our land stewards. And so I joke about funding, but funding is serious, but it does give us a chance to work together to brainstorm on how can we identify or tackle long-standing troubles or struggles. And it can take a long time. These are not things that happen overnight, but some of the things that we do talk about is how can we work together to either apply for grants or be strategic about what we're planning for, and also be conscious around some of the funding that we do get, public and private. So I don't want to make it sound like funding's not at the table, but we also want to make sure the more that we're able to bring the work back to the community, the stronger we will be to kind of push on any other vested interests that might be in the landscape around urban agriculture. So I think about NRCS and all the great funding opportunities and also policy work that they do. And I wanted to give you, Blake, a chance, and Caitlin, curious to hear how funding shows up in your work.
So just go back to what Carlos talked about with the partnership between NRCS and GreenThumb on the infrastructure funds for providing access to food-producing gardens within GreenThumb. That is huge. That is huge for not only the folks that will receive water, but that's huge for an agency like NRCS, and it's huge for a department like GreenThumb to be a part of that and be a part of that partnership. That amount of money takes a lot of, what's the word, Carlos? It takes a lot of effort to get folks on board to be able to earmark those types of funds in urban space. And so with Carlos working hand in hand, we were able to make that happen. And so that's a big deal. And so that just opens the door for other things that we will allow to do. One of the things that are coming up in FY24, so after October 1 for us, is our fiscal year, is People's Garden Initiative. We are partnering with Just Food to facilitate some funding for People's Gardens, so for the USDA People's Garden. So what that entails is once we have the announcement out on the street, gardens will be able to submit proposals to NRCS, and then we will rank those accordingly and then provide ultimately funding for those gardens. Those gardens that are tied to GreenThumb, Carlos and his group will be heavily involved in those planning efforts as we move forward. So we're excited to get that started. We're starting out with just $200,000, and then next year we'll look at upping that a little bit more as time goes on. The ceiling will be $10,000 per garden. We can pay for things like raised beds, chicken coops, hoop houses, irrigation, cover crops, you name it, we can pay for it. Chalkboards, picnic tables, the little square to, I think it's called square, somebody told me to use your credit card at farmers markets. All those good things we can be a part of to additionally provide food access to all.
For the funding through Cornell, I would say it's growing. So the Urban Ag Outreach Program started last year, And I'm the first person who's ever been in this role before. So it's forming and norming as we go. And with that, I think currently it's about building partnerships, either with community members, with industry, with different stakeholders, even policymakers, so that when we think about providing experiences to students, we have the funds to be able to do so. So I would say within this year, we were able to secure funding with the company. And with the funds, we were able to provide students with grow towers at their schools to provide hands-on experiences for them. And I think that as we continue to build those partnerships with different partners, we'll be able to provide and expand opportunities to students. And another example of a way that we've leveraged the funds we received through this project, we have a state convention every year, and this year is held in Buffalo. And for that state convention, we're allowing all FFA members, whether it's across New York City or even across upstate, to come together, fellowship with one another, professional development, participate in workshops. But to be honest, the barrier here for New York City students is the transportation. From New York City to Buffalo, that's a hike. That's a hike, right? So for us, we were able to help offset transportation for them. We got a charter bus, so we'll be able to transport them from New York City into Buffalo for that experience. So, yay, thank you. So I think the big thing with that, once again, is just continuing to build those partnerships and leveraging new funds so that every penny, nickel, dime that we're able to get, it's going back into our community for the kiddos to provide them experiences.
Great. Thank you.
Can I say one more thing?
Oh, yeah.
I forgot. So on the People's Garden Initiative, it's not the first time for USDA or NRCS to be involved in that. We had People's Gardens last year that we selected, Garden of Happiness in the Bronx, Taco Community Farms in the Bronx, and then the Urban Soils Institute on Governor's Island in conjunction with the New York City SWCD. And so as we start to implement those, and you guys are kind of looking at that announcement, we'll start to have some publicity behind that to where you guys can get comfortable with what the People's Garden is as we implement that. So.
Great. No, thanks for adding that. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Just Food. We have a few board members in the room right now. I'm embarrassing her. Yeah, sure. Well, you.
Why didn't they say woo-hoo when I said?
I'm sorry, I just was like started from school.
All right.
Exactly. There's a lot of love in the room for the long history of Just Food, and it's great to hear how Just Food is continuing to find ways to support our community partners and find ways to work with NRCS, so that's really exciting to hear. Yes, I wanted to jump in. We're talking about agriculture, we're talking about youth, we're talking about elders. Something that I heard earlier today is the ongoing need for our new emerging leaders in agriculture to share their knowledge or learn knowledge from our elders. But I also heard elders talking about how they could, it's self-acknowledged that sometimes it might be a little bit hard to learn from, but how important that is. And so I was curious to, how does your work support emerging urban ag leaders? And what is the role, if you have any, around youth education in building what we need is a resilient urban ag future? So maybe we'll start with you, Caitlin.
So yes, as mentioned, within this work, I think the biggest thing is we all raised our hand to say that education is the foundation of a lot of what we do. So if we believe in that, then we have to provide spaces for students to be able to learn and grow. And I know when I was a student back in my agricultural high school, it was the hands-on experiences that were tangible for me. So I think in this urban ag space, it's very important to provide those tangible hands-on experiences for the students and what that may look like. So within FFA, they have supervised agricultural experiences. And a supervised agricultural experience for a student is providing them with an experience that they may be learning in the classroom. So they may be taking part, like participating in hours in class where they're specifically working on their project. And it's student-based, so they can pick whatever project they would like. So with that, they're learning in the classroom, transferable skills come to time where they go on outside the classroom to get those hands-on experiences through different partners or through different gardeners literally sitting in this room. So I think the biggest correlation for the work I do and providing spaces for students to be young leaders is making sure that I am doing everything I can to advocate for the students and to provide them and put them in rooms that they would never be. And even going deeper, let's talk about how a lot of our students in our communities aren't even in rooms like this because they weren't invited. And I think that it's very important for anybody that has a seat at the table to be able to continue to advocate for the students, because they will be the future leaders on this panel, and we may not be here at some point. So I think the passion, the drive I find in my work is I'm in spaces where I can network and where I can leverage opportunities, and even with these folks, talking to them about what opportunities may rise for students, I think is very important. So to answer your question, I think the biggest thing within this role is being able to leverage partnerships, funding, and even community-based opportunities for students to be able to come out to. And I know I've heard a lot of people say it's a hassle having students come out to work on your land. I know 100%. I see it in your faces. But I will say I am a strong advocate for students who are involved within the youth organizations. It's a different type of student, being honest with you. These students are very eager to learn. They want those hands-on experiences. And I would say I would love to connect with you all and to introduce you to the students that I work with, because they're very good kiddos and they just want a shot. And I think that looking at you all in your eyes right now, if you have the opportunity to, let's give these kiddos a shot.
I can attest to that. I recently, Kayla invited me to speak with some of the students in the newest chapters of FFA and some of the students you were working with, and they were excited, they were driven, and what I also appreciated was how interested they were in the spectrum of career opportunities that agriculture holds. So there were folks that were interested in being educators, there were folks that were interested in, of course, growing, but even other opportunities, teaching, policy. And I think, if we're thinking about our future and our emerging leaders, we should think about the breadth, like age, skill, but also agriculture hits so many facets of our work in the sectors. I know there's work that we've been prioritizing in the Office of Urban Agriculture, again working with lead agencies like DOE to identify how to deepen the experiential learning of students so every public student can have the opportunity soon or eventually to be able to get their hands dirty, to be able to learn, and also learn the life cycle of food, but also learn the struggles and work and successes of our farmers and our ag partners, rural and urban. I'm curious too, and we do that in multiple ways, but also want to give you a chance, Carlos, on this side of things if you wanted to share. I know we've often talked about wanting to identify ways to expand capacity, create opportunities within the city for apprenticeships, workforce, labor, and just knowing we need this green economy needs to have dignified jobs as well.
Right. Thank you. I want to go back to the key word for the day. I think it's partnerships. We have a long-standing partnership with GrowTogether, Department of Education, and GreenThumb with the school gardening program. So as you know, over 1,000 public schools are part of this citywide partnership with students are experiencing firsthand the idea of having a raised bed or having aquaponic systems in their own schools or their own campus. I think introducing them at early age is very important. We also have partnerships at a different level. For example, I see City Parks Foundation and the Learning Garden Program. They run their own program in many GreenThumb gardens, and there's a partnership between this program is a nonprofit with the community gardeners. So, and it's a perfect partnership, like the idea of like using these spaces as spaces for learning. So the idea, also organically, like many garden groups, they have their own raised beds for youth. Like in Amboy, like there are spaces that gardeners take this to passion, and the idea of like we planting the seed here for the next generation. We want to share our knowledge with the future stewards. So I think there are different ways of partnering, and with for example, GreenThumb has our own partnership with NYC service. Since 2015, we have the Youth Leadership Council, and we work with high school students, and we bring them to, we offer the opportunity to experience to be a community gardener. And it's in the spirit of service, but at the same time in the spirit of learning hand in hand with the community gardener. So, and also it's very, very valuable. Again, there are different opportunities for youth, and I think I agree, like we need to cultivate that next generation.
Absolutely. I would be remiss not to mention the mayor and city council's commitment to funding the increase of NYCHA farms and the number of farms that are going to continue to be built and cultivated. There are a lot of great partnerships that in my role I've been learning about, in particular East New York Farms out in Brooklyn, Green City Forest at multiple sites across there. It's been really encouraging to see the engagement of meeting residents and meeting tenants, and how urban agriculture can evolve and articulate in different land, in different places, and the opportunities that youth bring. So whether it's a stipend opportunity that can lead and inspire to do the work that they do that for the rest of their lives. You know, I always think about like Domingo and his work around compost and compost power from the work he did with Green City Forest. But also I think it's the opportunity of exposing our community to different forms of urban agriculture. It doesn't have to always be behind, it's not just, you know, GreenThumb, I know we're here, we're gonna, you know, give it love, but there's so many opportunities around urban agriculture that I want folks to continue to see more and more, and also think about other agriculture projects in our city like NYCHA farms as well. I'm hoping that there are some opportunities to cultivate youth, but also relationships and partnerships. I think there's a lot of learning that can continue to be done in relationship building with the land stewards, the youth land stewards, but also just the community folks there as well. Great, thank you.
I'm going to briefly mention another partnership that we have.
Oh good, bring them up first.
With NYCHA, we received one-shot funding a few years ago, where GreenThumb is supporting 50 community gardens in 50 developments. So that's a testament, between agencies we can work together, and again in the spirit of supporting urban agriculture. So, and we can support another 50 and 100 more, but we need to build that capacity. But for now, we can support 50, and that's what we're doing. We are rebuilding and expanding those 50 spaces. So I think talking about innovation, that's another way of looking through the lens of hey, maybe we can do something else in this campus, in NYCHA campuses, to expand urban agriculture. And I'll leave it there because we already got the 5-minute Q&A.
So we have some questions. So we're going to mingle in some of your great questions. Wow. Okay, yes. We're going to mingle in that, but that's a deep question, so we're going to get to it. But while we're doing that, I also want to hear from folks while I read some of these. Give the panelists a chance to take a moment, a quick moment, and then what do you envision in the future of urban agriculture in New York City? What would you like to see? What would you like for something to advance or continue? What do you envision? Think about that while we're working through these questions, and then we'll popcorn our answers. Okay. Let me start with this. The recent New York State Community Garden Task Force report tells the story of over 2,000 farms in New York City, but they're not producing enough fresh food still. So what are New York City and New York State and Fed doing to help secure more growing space and support innovation, besides applying for grants? Great question. Okay, who wants to start?
They talk about the feds.
Well, all right, I'll take a stab at this real quick, and I think it's an excellent question, and it actually was one of the questions I thought about talking about. You know, land tenure and access is a hot topic in our urban ag community. There's no BS there. I mean, I think, to me, where it comes to, in order to secure more land in our city, we know that city land is hard. So that's city-owned land as well as developed land or private-owned land, right? So I think, to me, what I've been noticing is one of the opportunities is to identify underutilized land, preferably, or not preferably, sorry, don't tell anybody to use the word preferably, potentially underutilized city-owned land that might have not been viewed for urban agriculture purposes. But in order to realistically do that for folks, we're going to need a feasible plan to assess that, to build a tool, to build a criteria for the city to really do that. Because it hasn't really been in the mandate for other agencies to do so. So that's something that I've kind of put on our tracker in order to try to work towards. And I think some ways that we can do that, to find funding to do that, because we don't have the funding to do it currently, would be potential grants, large-scale grants, maybe federal grants. So that is one example.
I already spoke about the example of NYC and our partnership. That's an example of accessing new land, right? Our main interest is our current portfolio of gardens remain active. I won't lie to you, some gardens are inactive or struggling with membership, and I think our first approach is to direct interested potential members to go to those spaces that need the extra help. When we know that there is already capacity in those gardens, we work with community members to identify potential location for new community gardens. And we have done that for the last, we have started at least 26 gardens since 2016 alone. How? Working alongside many of you, identifying vacant city-owned land and reactivating those spaces. As you know, back in 2016, we transferred from HPD to parks 36 gardens. So I think we've been proactively supporting land access and land tenure, which coming from HPD to parks means preservation of those spaces long term. So we have done some initiatives around that, but I don't want to create false expectations. Yes, let's start gardens, and the idea is not about numbers. The idea is about deep engagement and cultivating the space that we have now. Because honestly, we need to keep all these gardens active. If they fall inactive, that's a problem. People might say this garden is inactive, we can use it for something else. So I think if you help me, I will help you. That's why we have a community engagement team. They are in their task basically to reactivate those spaces, and we do our best working with community boards and nonprofits and groups help us to bring new blood to this garden. So our first approach is always reactivating what we have.
I think that's great.
I'll make it quick. NRCS is not a land ownership agency. We are a conservation agency, so from the standpoint of land access, that is not us. But what we can do is once that access is granted, we can provide that federal assistance to those producers under the beginning farmer initiative that we have.
Sounds good. Yeah. And I think sometimes we see land that goes fallow or underutilized or dumped on or just used for other things that we assume are city-owned land or not sure who the owners are. And I think something to also consider in thinking about state level too. There are some things that are state-owned land as well. And so bringing that information back to Ag and Markets and the Community Garden Task Force, if there's state-owned land that you feel is in your neighborhood that's underutilized, that might be something to lift up as well.
Just to add to that, like GreenThumb plays that role as well. We facilitate connections with other state and city agencies. For example, if an agency cannot transfer the land to us, we're happy to work with you and navigate how to get access through to the land through their specific process. We have worked with New York State DOT, for example. We have worked with DOE. We have even partnership with DCAS. So there's a way to access land. So if you really think that there's a need to address like land access, talk to us. We're happy to guide you through that process.
Thank you. So I will ask you real quick before I lift up another question is, what is something you would like to see in the future of urban agriculture?
I've already shared this with Evan and you. I think my dream for GreenThumb is to have our own apprenticeship program.
Yes.
A year-round apprenticeship program that we can, we can have young people come to GreenThumb for a year, get paid, get trained, and go to your gardens, help you build raised beds, learn from the land, learn from you, and then once that year is done, go find a green job. That's my dream.
I love it. Thank you.
Make it happen.
Make it happen. So there is a question related to, do we envision a path for community groups to buy back land that's been transferred to the city as a source of building equity? I think that that is a question that is probably a question that is a more complicated question that we have today for in terms of talking about buying back land. But I would want to say is something that this panel is also offering is the opportunity for us to continue to learn and hear from the community on their different views around land and land tenure in New York City. So as we're building, my office is building out a plan for urban agriculture for New York City, I would take the challenge of bringing a question like this back so we can bring it to the community to continue to talk about it as we're building out the report. Like assessing, not just land, but what people want to see with community land. How does that sound as an answer? Because to be fair, it's a real question, it's a genuine question, and we are talking about land tenure, but buying back land, I think there's a lot more nuance and complications to that I would want community members to have information and be aware so we can have a genuine conversation about that beyond this panel. So we're all empowered, because I think that part of the work for us as an urban agriculture representatives is how do we increase awareness of the work and struggles that are happening, but how do we also share information so folks feel empowered about what they're advocating for?
Pretty much related to the buyback program. As you know, many of our coastal land was affected by many weather-related events, and then that land might be available for different uses. And I think internally with many agencies, we have discussed the idea of that land to be available potentially for urban agriculture. As we discussed in the past with them, is like, that's the perfect use for community gardens. If a garden gets destroyed for, let's say, the next Sandy, we can rebuild our garden overnight, to be honest. Give us a few weeks and we can build it back. So I think these are resilient spaces that we can have that type of use in those coastal areas and being, at the same time, being resilient, but I think having a good use for that land. So I think that's an evolving conversation in the city, and there'll be like a very recent report and study. So the buyback program, I think, is kind of a topic for discussion.
Thank you. But thanks for bringing it up. We will continue to bring it back. Okay, another question. I noticed that the USDA FSA was focused on loans for farmers. How will this process accommodate, administrate, and determine loans for historically marginalized groups who ultimately may not get the loan due to the parameters set determining eligibility. So I think, so that is a USDA FSA particular question, which is, I don't think we have somebody on the panel that could speak to it, but we do in the audience have the new FSA Executive Director, Miriam, who might be able to take that question. So just in terms of time, can I share this question with you? And hopefully the person who asked this question can reach out to her. And that's Miriam over there.
Woo-hoo!
Yes. Congratulations, Miriam. Also important to note, the FSA has also recently made their announcements about their board appointees, and you have representation from all 5 boroughs clustered in 3 counties. You also have county representation here as well and throughout the conference. So if you are connected to FSA in any way, raise your hand so folks know who to talk to. No, there's another hand in here. Okay, good. All right. Thank you. Awesome. How are we on time? Do we have
15 minutes.
Oh, no time. All right, I'll take that second question then. Do you have more questions? Okay, great. So while we're waiting for those questions, how about you, Caitlin? What do you want to see in the future of a bold and equitable agricultural landscape in New York City?
I think for me, again, I'm speaking from the student's viewpoint, right? I'm speaking for the kids today. I think that if I was back in high school, when we look at our students today, they want high-paying jobs, and they're not going to settle for anything less, and we know this, right? And with that, I think that the urban ag space is a good space for us to not only educate students about healthy living and to help even with the issues we may have or face with obesity. I think we also should provide them more opportunities that's going to pay them what they're worth in this space. So me being from Chicago, I think that New York City has a lot of growing to do as it pertains to like job opportunities for students in the ag space. And I'll say job opportunities, high-paying job opportunities that will want them to stay in these spaces. So I think a few years from now, I know baby steps, so I'm gonna say a few years from now because it's not happening tomorrow. I think it would be good to see those job opportunities around the different areas of urban ag that will allow students to say like, hey, I may want to be a gardener and I may want to intern at X, Y, and Z garden. I think it's important for us to provide them a stipend or a pay that is worth their time to work those hours in that garden space. So for me, I think it's great you mentioned the apprenticeship program because it just goes back to let's provide spaces for students to grow and provide job opportunities for them to grow with money attached. It's a win-win. So thank you.
You got the crowd behind you. I love it. One question we have is, as an act of recognizing the benefits of community gardens and the $46 million towards water installation, can you all work together to waive the antiquated and capacity limiting fees of DP on non-parks and all gardens?
So we all have heard the concerns of non-parks gardens paying for their water bill. I would say talk to your elected officials, talk to the mayor's office of urban agriculture, and I think these are policies in place that can be changed. I think that these gardens are serving a purpose. They're feeding communities. The money invested in water can be used in something else for the garden, and I think it's a fair discussion to have. I don't think it's unreasonable. So you know, parks gardens don't pay a penny is the best deal in town, as you know. Free access to land, free access to water, free resources, tools, seeds, right? So I think for gardens like land trust gardens, IPQLT, MLT, Bronx Land Trust, I think it's fair to advocate for that change, and I'll let you all to advocate for that change. I think it's a simple ask.
And that actually connects to some of the other questions that we received in terms of what is the best mechanisms for garden members and leaders to elevate their needs and concerns to the Office of Urban Agriculture. Yeah, I guess that's me. You're trying to find out how to reach me, huh? Okay. Well, you know, if I'm not like, you know, sorry, I was gonna make a joke, but this is not the room for it. Okay, how do we reach your office? Yes, so, and I'm gonna answer the other question about like a central website. So the short answer is no, there's not a central website for our multiple agencies and departments. However, the Office of Urban Agriculture has an existing website that we are in the development of changing and adapting so it can be a more centralized hub of information and resources. So I would say to keep your eyes posted on nyc.gov/sites/agriculture to find that. There's also, we're very present on our social media, NYC Urban Ag, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So I would say that is also another good way to learn about information we're sharing, resources for right now, and a way to contact us. We bring that information back to the office. Oh, Mina's not here. Mina, our lovely intern, I wanted to give them a shout out, has been helping us on the back end of things with creating some of our newer pages around making it easy and more accessible for community to reach out to the office and to share their thoughts and concerns. I also, you know, Evan has been doing a great job as the deputy director in terms of trying to stay engaged and also being a resource. So we will have a website that will be a little bit more fleshed out. We're hoping to continue to get information from our sister agencies in order to make it a little bit more centralized, but that is a little bit work in progress. But I would definitely say stay tuned. What was the other? Yes, all the info we're sharing. So I'd like to kick it to the panelists. If folks wanted to stay in touch with you or reach out to you, Caitlin, I think you're going to be running for office soon, so people are going to want to know how to contact you. I'm teasing you. But no, seriously, how can folks continue to stay engaged with your office, your organization, and be aware of the work that you're doing? Let's start with you, Blake.
So, preferably do not contact me, but if you find me on the web, send me an email. You can Google NRCS New York. It will have our website, and it will have contact information for each one of our field offices throughout the state, including those that service New York City, which will come up with list campuses information for that.
For me, I don't have any direct social media as it pertains to New York City. We have a New York State FFA website. We have a New York State FFA Instagram handle. For me, if you have your pens out, my email is cmcfadden@cornell.edu. One more time for the people in the back. cmcfadden@cornell.edu, and I'll be around the room too if anybody wants to just have a discussion to the side too.
Fantastic.
I forgot one contact. So for USDA purposes, FSA or NRCS, farmers.gov is our national website that will have urban space on there as well. And there will be some national feel to some of those funding opportunities that a lot of you folks can take take advantage of as well.
Oh, yeah, and I totally forgot, the office has an email as well. It's NYC Urban Ag at cityhall.nyc.gov. Yeah, they don't make it easy. Yes, at cityhall.gov. So NYC Urban Ag, all one word, at cityhall, one word, .nyc.gov. GOV. Yeah, we're trying to work on this. I mean, y'all know how to find me, but yeah. Carlos, is there anything about GreenThumb that you'd like to share or like promote?
Yes, I forgot to mention one thing about land tenure. We have 381 gardens under our own jurisdiction, the park department. Again, we support 554, but 380 are under our purview. Talking about land tenure is like many folks were concerned about like the preservation of the spaces, and we listen. We work with the law department. We work with our parks attorney, and we increase the term of the license agreement from 4 to 10 years. So, as you know, we have gone through this process before. The new license agreement started January 1st, 2023. So, just to let you know that these spaces are here to stay. Please continue signing the license agreement. The continuous use of that license agreement means that there's an active membership, there's an active community card. That's the end of my spiel, but you can connect with us in our new website, nyc.gov/parks/GreenThumb.
Oh, I'm jealous. Okay. We're gonna bring this in the inside, but Blake, what is something that you would like to see in the future of a bold and equitable New York City urban ag landscape?
So it's simple for USDA. We just want to copy to the keys, right? We want an opportunity to be in the same space that has been moving for a long time, and we're going to work towards that. You know, I was kidding about don't contact me, but my email address is blake.glover@usda.gov. I'm on the NRCS website, so when and if there's any times where you feel that the service that you think we should have provided you is not up to par, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. I take our service very seriously along with FSA. And so we're trying to change that at USDA as a whole. So if there's any issues, please contact us. But no, future-wise, number one, getting the keys to an office in New York City is huge. Being in this space 100% of the time, dedicated to New York City, along with dedicated funding to New York City, is huge for USDA, it's huge for NRCS, it's huge for FSA. And as time goes on, as farm bills continue, New York City and the 17 other hubs around the country will be provided those funds as well. So we're working hard to stand up this office and are excited to be a part of this movement.
Well, I think we are at time. I want to thank our panelists. Y'all showed up so wonderfully. Thank you to y'all for staying and engaging with us. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you're leaving inspired and engaged. And thanks again.